2 years. The heartbreak of knowing what happened initially and believing for years that justice would be served, and just understanding how hard it is to convict a police officer in this country. The burden is high for murder already. It's even higher when an officer is involved, and it's also heartbreaking because what it does is it normalizes behavior like what Connor Grubb exhibited that day, and that is not normal behavior. We look at these recent killings, these recent police killings in Columbus, and you have officers who have an unreasonable and irrational fear with no weapons involved, or folks doing very minimal behavior that they escalate into a murder. It's not normal behavior. It's not something that should be normalized. It is something that I believe that police officers don't want to see normalized because it's just not justifiable. And so what this did was it set an example of a situation that could be deemed to be justified in the future. And I think we all agree that this is a tragedy that should never have happened. Connor Grubb was a trained officer that day. Takaya Young had a gun placed in her face, and she had a split-second decision to make. And I cannot say what I would do in that situation, but I can say Connor Grubb also struggled in a split-second situation with years of training. And so we have to have de-escalation. We cannot have officers who pull a gun in a petty theft situation. 2 lives were lost. It's not just about Takaya. It's an unborn daughter that does not get to step foot on this earth. And you have sons who grew up without their mother, and it's just heartbreaking. My hope is that we all understand that there cannot be two justice systems in America. We just cannot have it that way. We have to have accountability that looks the same for everybody, no matter what uniform you're wearing, no matter what color you are. We have to understand that wrong is wrong. And it's just heartbreaking to know that the family has to deal with this in this moment, but we'll keep fighting. You know, we have a civil suit that is ongoing, and we'll keep pushing forward.
How does this verdict impact your civil suit?
It doesn't. I mean, the burden in the civil suit is lower, and I have no doubt that we will meet that burden. You know, no doubt about that whatsoever. But, you know, in this moment, that doesn't bring the family any solace. I mean, they're not thinking about the civil part. I mean, they wanted him to go to jail, you know, to go to prison. And so, you know, we'll push forward, and civil cases afford us a bit more opportunity to dig into the systemic things that happened here, and to really ensure that across the board we can make sure that these incidents don't happen again. But, you know, we're pushing forward. It's active, and we're ready to go.
It's important to understand that this is a criminal finding. This isn't a moral finding. This isn't a civil finding. Takaya and her daughter should be alive today. And as Attorney Walton said, we shouldn't live by two different standards or two different set of rules for two different sets of people. Connor Grubb's a professional. Takaya Young was a civilian. We expect her to act a particular way in a particular circumstance, but we don't expect Connor Grubb to exhibit the same level of professionalism. So this fight will continue, as Attorney Walton said. In the civil court, we will hold them accountable by any means we can, and we will continue trying to seek justice for this family. This family is devastated. Candidly, we are as well, but we're not exhausted. The fight will continue. We'll continue to push forward to get justice for this family.
Sean, every morning we saw you guys gather out there and pray. How important is faith to you guys right now in this moment?
You know, it's kept Miss Nadine going throughout this time. I think every interview she's given, she's talked about her faith in God and believing that things will work out in their favor. And so the hope is that they can find the meaning in this. I mean, I think in this moment it's tough because what we see is, you know, even beyond this family, I mean, there are people throughout this country that witnessed what happened. There are police officers who witnessed what happened that believe that it's wrong. And so, again, I think it's a tragedy. It's an American tragedy, truly. It's the first time that we've had an officer indicted for killing a pregnant woman on duty. And my hope is that it's the last time it happens. Unfortunately, the result does not lend itself to holding officers accountable and ensuring that they think twice.
How does this affect your outlook on some of the other cases going on in Franklin County, specifically Franklin County Sheriff Deputy Jason Meade and Brittany Anderson as well?
Yeah, our hope is that, we'll get a set of jurors on those cases that will see the tragedy in those cases as we hope they would have seen in this case. Jason Mead's case is coming up, and then Officer Anderson's case is coming up, and the Donovan Lewis case as well. We've had a conviction, fortunately, in one of these cases, Adam Coy. We had a conviction, and we're hopeful that the truth of that case will bleed over into these other cases. Unfortunately, it didn't happen here. We respect the jury and their consideration. We're disappointed. We don't believe the evidence should have led them to this result, but we have a system of justice in this country and we have to follow it. But we're confident that the next round, when we deal with Mead and Anderson, moving forward, that there will be justice found in those cases as well.
I know you spoke to the family right before. What did you tell them? What did they tell you?
I think, they believed that there would be a conviction. I mean, up until the moment that the words were read, there was no doubt that there would be a conviction. And so I could see the energy kind of deflate out of, both Miss Nadine and, Mr. Tim, Takaya's father. And you heard the frustration out there. Candidly, my daughters knew about this case, and they're 7 and 9 years old. And that part is heartbreaking.
Yeah, folks, we need to have a real conversation about policing in this country, not just in this community, but how we as a community view police officers and law enforcement. And unfortunately, what I believe happened here is that there tends to be a default when it comes to law enforcement, because we're taught that we need law enforcement for every single thing, when the reality is perhaps we need to reevaluate the way we police communities, certainly the way we police communities of color. Because what we found disproportionately is that when it comes to people of color are shot and killed, not given the grace of any sort of a relief from these officers. So we need to have a real conversation about what it means to police in America, what it means to police in this community, and what it means to police when it comes to black and brown folks in this country.
Are you worried about how the community is going to reflect on this? Are you worried about riots? Are you worried about?
Yeah, I will say this, and I'm not going to speak for Attorney Walton, but I don't like to direct people on how to conduct themselves when it comes to issues like this. When you live in communities that are impacted by law enforcement in the way which this case shows, I don't think it's fair to judge those communities. So I'm not going to sit here and tell the community how they should conduct themselves. I understand what I'm supposed to say here today, which is everybody be peaceful and pray and kind of take their time. But the reality is we're feeling the same way that they're feeling. I've got 2 sons. Like Sean said, he's got 2 daughters. They have to grow up in this world, and we have to teach them a whole different standard when it comes to if they run into the police. We see our children in Takaya's case. So respectfully, I'm not gonna presume to judge the community on how they conduct themselves.
And I'll say, I think rioting is doing the community a disservice. I believe there will be systemic change. I believe there will be an informed community that understands the system and understands what we're up against. Jurors don't get paid a lot. They don't have child care. Many times, folks who would bring a different perspective are not on the jury. I think we saw 3 black jurors dismissed by the defense in this, and there was no reasoning stated. So we're already at a deficit in terms of who's actually considering the facts here, and who's bringing a different perspective into the jury room during those deliberations. And so, again, understanding the system, you can prevent this from happening in the future in a different way. And so I think what we see 4 officers who are facing, a jury for their actions on duty for killing people, and that's different. That's progress that we have not had before. We're seeing transparency more and more. I believe what happened here was very transparent, and so it goes beyond rioting. It goes to understanding the systems at play. Those who come in and defend, these bad officers in those moments, and normalize that behavior. I think they should also feel some shame there because they know how they feel about the shooting as well, for sure.
Talk about kids and the impact on this case. We saw the family bring Takaya's 2 sons to court yesterday. They didn't stay very long, but we then saw some commenting online about they wanted the jury to see the kids. who's they? I mean, that it feels a little performative. What was the purpose of having them here? And
Yeah, so I can't tell anybody how to act in that moment, you know? I mean, if somebody close to me was killed and my family experienced that throughout this process, I would want them to know this is what the system looks like. This is what accountability, excuse me, this is what being held accountable looks like. And so I would certainly, you know, just understand that for them, they don't know what happened to their mom outside of a police officer took her life, and it was unjust. And I'm sure they've heard for 2 years now that there will be justice. And so I don't think it was performative. I don't think it was meant to you know, bring out any emotion. I mean, you can't be any more emotional than what was already taking place. I mean, a baby was killed. We saw autopsy photos of a baby. And so there's no need to bring any more emotion out here. And honestly, I mean, they showed restraint throughout, you know, that time. They did not try to do anything to influence this process at all. So, you know, I have nothing but respect for them. My heart goes out to those boys because their experience with the system is not a very kind one, and they'll have to live with that for a while.
Anything you want to say to the jury?
No, I mean, the jury didn't do anything wrong here. Connor Grubb is the one who pulled the trigger. Connor Grubb is the one who has us all here right now. Again, many folks try to point out Takaya's actions, and I think, again, normalizing what untrained, scared citizens, we have no understanding of their mental capacity, how fast they react to commands. You have one person shouting at her right here. You have a gun pointed in your face right here, and you don't know why because you're talking to this person right here. And so, you know, she did not press the gas in that moment. She clearly did not want to harm him, but I think his intent showed from the time he came up and pulled the gun that he was going to harm her. He was going to shoot her if he had to do so. And for some reason, he believed he had to do so, despite the fact that she was being calm and talking to his partner, who also was shocked at the gunshot. That's the one that's reasonable. That's the one who, you know, should be judged by that standard right there, because he understood, I'm going to talk to her, use my de-escalation tactics that I've been trained to utilize. And I just, you know, don't understand how we can normalize this officer making a decision to take a life with her trying to avoid him at a slow speed.
You guys have talked about this case in the cosmos of policing in the Black community. You're both Black parents. Will this verdict inform any conversations you're having with your kids tonight and moving forward?
We have conversations all the time, and I'm not going to speak for Sean, but my sons are aware of what I do, but we try to keep them shielded as long as possible as we can from the realities of being, in my case, a Black male in this country. But I know the day is going to come when they're going to have a conversation that says, you need to conduct yourself a certain way just so you survive this encounter with law enforcement. And when it comes to being Black in America, and when it comes to policing in Black America, there's two different sets of rules. We're told not to jump to conclusions, but I can't help but wonder if Takaya would have been a white woman, how would he have conducted himself in that particular scenario? Would he have shown her the grace that Takaya and her child deserved? That's the question that we're all left with, because Takaya is not here to answer those questions either. Her child's not here to live a full life. She leaves behind 2 sons, so who also unfortunately would have to have those conversations as well. So we really need to reevaluate the conversations we're having, and respectfully, what we would ask moving forward, you know, there's a lot of media coverage, and there's a lot of coverage of the theft portion of this case, and we understand it can be sensational at times, but the reality is, stealing liquor at a grocery store doesn't mean a death warrant. It shouldn't mean a death warrant. And if we're going to be the type of country we want to be, the way we treat people who even are accused of crimes says a lot about who we are as a country. So unfortunately, you know, I will have those conversations at some point, hopefully not soon, but it's inevitable when you're living the Black experience in this country.
I couldn't help but notice both of you kind of stopped, get emotional as you've been speaking to us, swallow a little bit. You spend a lot of time with this family. Is there anything that you want to say to them? I'm sure you'll say it, but is there anything you want the community to know?
Yeah, that we all know the truth and that we're fighting for them, you know. It is emotional in so many ways. You know, to answer your question, my daughters will probably cry when they hear the news, because you cannot shield them from, you know, the realities of what happens. And this one has always been tough because not only was she a woman, but she was pregnant. And while they're taking in the reality of what happens too many times, to internalize that, to know that, you know, these little girls could have that same fear, they're going to take it hard. Not quite sure what I'm going to say. I mean, a few years ago, my daughter asked if the mean man that did what he did to Casey is going to come get her. You know, I mean, these are things that too many communities are having to internalize and process and wonder if you'll be next. And will there be any justice for what happens to you? And I think that's also why, you know, Robert and I fight these cases, because unfortunately, when people don't take the time to assess, to consider the situation, it could be me next, it could be Robert next. You know, I have a suit on right now. If I look otherwise, who knows how I'll be treated? And so it's important that we figure out how we all talk about this stuff, right? To Robert's point, like, to normalize and to talk about the theft when there's a murder that also took place. I mean, those two things aren't even in time contextually. There's a reason why that encounter happened, but Moynihan is what the reaction was to the theft. Grubb came up and pulled his gun out because he saw his partner talking to a woman at the car, and she wouldn't get out the car, so he pulled his gun out. I mean, that's just not normal behavior. And, you know, yeah.
And to the family, what I would say is, and they know this, we're with you, and we're going to be with you, and just like all the other families we represent, we take these cases because they mean something to us. I mean, we live in the same country, we live the same experience. So when we go home, we can't leave these cases at the office because we live them, and they mean more to us because of what it means to our children, to our family. Like Sean said, you know, this could be us, suit or no suit, because the reality is when you're black in this country, you're looked at as a threat when you should be given some grace to just live in this country.
And, you know, just full circle. Four black people killed. One thought, you know, some keys or a phone was a gun. Another hunted someone and shot him in the back going into his home with AirPods in. Another, you know, was shot instantaneously when the door opened. You know, he had a vape. And so, again, like, we're criminalizing things that are not criminal to the extent that the force is used. And I think that's the whole point of training. It's the point of de-escalation, cultural training, you know, all these things. And there's some patterns that are emerging in these cases across the board that we'll point out in our civil cases and see to point out to you all. But our goal is to stop those patterns. Like, we don't like being here. I got other cases I could be working on that, you know, my goal is that we're not doing this work anymore. Like, we don't want to do civil rights work, despite what some folks may try to say about trying to get paid off these cases. I guess he walked out, but, you know, no, it's not about that. We're doing what has to be done because other folks will step up and have the same courage to speak to what's wrong.
Who were you just looking for?
Brian Steele.
You've talked about the need for training. Have any conversations happened with the FOP, with any law enforcement agencies at this point for more training?
My experience in dealing with the FOP is that's a dead end. You have to understand, this is a profession that's operating the way it intends to. This is a profession that's operating the way it was set up to, which just brings me back to my initial point. We need to talk about how we police in this country. And I'm not willing to give any level of grace to what our folks are going through because there's communities of color that can't just live, that just can't exist.